Greetings fellow cultivators. Welcome to Oscar Nova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Today, we're diving into the story of what's the point of cultivating immortality if you don't have money. On the battlefield, Gong Shu Jin advanced rapidly, not pausing amidst the bombardment, repeatedly breaking through the sky, filling thunder and fire. He carried Ying Xin on his left shoulder, Zhang Yu on his right, Yu Xing'an against his chest, and Li Zhao on his back. And no matter how bloodied or severely injured the four classmates on him were, even if they had stopped breathing, he never thought of putting them down. Because he knew that only by relying on his comrades could he survive. On a crisis-ridden battlefield, classmates from the civil engineering department are the best protective talismans. Thank you for protecting me. The artifact spirit nodded, slightly calm and decisive, swift in action. Even on a crisis-ridden battlefield, at the brink of life and death, there was no trace of panic, demonstrating a willpower befitting his Tao heart level. He can be recommended for the Spirit Realm competition next semester. Zhang Yu, having suddenly become wealthy, walked down the street. With deposits exceeding 1,000 spirit coins, he didn't choose to squander it. Instead, he displayed the deposit amount on his forehead, immediately gaining countless friendships and receiving wave after wave of gifts. And in the various scams that followed, he avoided them one by one, remaining calm and composed throughout. The artifact spirit recorded facing sudden wealth. His core remained stable, with extremely strong self-control. Looking at Zhang Yu's scores, the artifact spirit said lightly, as expected, his Tao heart is still above Gong Shu Jin's, already on par with Ji Yuan Shu. In the mana exam, students were being tested on their mana capacity, mana quality, and Gangki conductivity. And as the numbers appeared one by one, gasps of surprise could be heard from the crowd, now and then. As the mana teacher, Li Mingbo was naturally curious to see the students' results. In his eye socket, all students were ranked according to their different origin layers. As the students' results appeared, the scores were basically positively correlated with their layer. According to the data completed so far, the first is Ji Yuansha from the 6th layer, the second is Gong Shu Jin from the 4th layer, the third is Ying Xin, the 4th. But the next moment, his gaze narrowed slightly. He saw a name soaring ahead like a rocket, actually surpassing Gong Shu Jin from the 4th layer and reaching a position comparable to Ji Yuan Shu from the 6th layer. Zhang Yu from the 1st layer. Li Mingbo remembered this name. He was the student who always sat in the back row with 2 other 1st layer students in class. Last semester, his mana score was just barely keeping up with Gong Shu Jin, and this semester he's already comparable to Ji Yuan Shu. Li Mingbo was slightly stunned. A 1st layer student can, actually, catch up to the level of a 6th layer student. In the physical strength exam, under the shocked gaze of everyone, 2 figures shot out like 2 bolts of lightning, refusing to yield, crisscrossing and flashing back and forth on the complex simulated battlefield, neither able to shake off the other. One of them was Zhang Yu. At this moment, his essence and energy were boiling within him, his blood surging violently like magma. The battle demon life-all technique was unleashed to its limit, directly increasing his physical strength by 1.5 levels, pushing Zhang Yu's physical strength to a terrifying 17.38. Driven by such violent physical strength, his speed reached an unprecedented level. Even with his entire body covered in mysticism number 20, it felt incredibly light to his senses. At the same time, he was also using his mind for 2 tasks, controlling his body to move forward, while simultaneously controlling several formless warriors, who, with the assistance of his 3-eye divine ability, and time-scarred demonic eyes, blocked various attacks on the simulated battlefield for him. But even under these circumstances, he found that he still couldn't surpass the Ji Yuan Shu ahead of him. This guy is so fast. He has too many artifact bones for acceleration on him. It seems I still can't beat him in this round. However, Zhang Yu was already used to this. Speed was not his strong suit, after all. His current high-speed movement was purely driven by his basic stats, his hard strength, pushing it out bit by bit. Zhang Yu thought to himself, the outcome still depends on the construction exam. The construction ability I've honed this semester, refined through countless trials, is my greatest strength. Zhang Yu had already inquired the final professional exam for the civil engineering department. Each academic year would be the most difficult, have the highest weight and comprehensive score, and have the greatest impact on rankings. Meanwhile, behind Zhang Yu and Ji Yuan Shu, Gong Shu Jin's Gangqi surged, his streamlined body constantly tearing through the atmosphere. But even though all four artifact bones on his body had been specially replaced with displacement acceleration sets, he could only watch helplessly as the two figures ahead of him moved further and further away, gradually losing sight of the flashing rankings above their heads. Gongshu Jin's eyes were filled with unwillingness. How is this possible? How is this possible? Why has the gap widened even more? Over the past semester, he had taken out maximum loans, burned spirit coins, and even equipped different sets of artifact bones for mana cultivation, physical cultivation, and different exams. He had also calculated every second of his daily cultivation details, not wasting a single moment. Why? Why can't even I, like this, catch up to them? How much money did they spend? As the exams progressed one by one, Ji Yuanshu and Xiong Yu gradually became the focus of all students in the class. Especially seeing them repeatedly die in the exams, or watching Xiong Yu constantly chase after Ji Yuanshu's figure, made the students realize that the first place in the freshman class would be decided between these two. And currently, Yingzhen analyzed, I'm afraid Ji Yuanshu's chances of winning are much higher. After all, at the end of last semester, his comprehensive score was 27 points ahead of Xiong Yu. Even if he doesn't lead Xiong Yu by much in this final exam, it will be difficult for Xiong Yu to surpass him. Yu Xingyan looked at Xiong Yu, who ultimately failed to surpass Ji Yuanshu in the speed exam, and breathed a slight sigh of relief. Good, Xiong Yu didn't surpass Ji Yuanshu. He scared me to death. I thought he was really going to challenge for first place. Yu Xingyan couldn't even imagine how uncomfortable he would be if he saw Xiong Yu defeat Ji Yuanshu and leave him so far behind. That would be even more uncomfortable than seeing his good brother use the time-scarred demonic eyes, by many times. And compared to the students' vague guesses, the teachers who could see the back-end scores in advance had a clearer grasp of the situation. Talishan had been watching the scores of the two after each exam, calculating the changes in their comprehensive scores. As he calculated, he muttered, overall, Xiong Yu's basic stats are actually close to Ji Yuanshu's. Truly incredible. But thinking about Xiong Yu's medication dosage this semester, he couldn't help but marvel at how incredible it was that Xiong Yu was still alive. His physique is even more formidable than he said. He's indeed worth focus on training. Alas, it's a pity. If he were from an upper layer, even just a second layer person, he might have been able to surpass Ji Yuanshu in this exam. And the situation observed by Talishan was also sensed by Ji Yuanshu. Looking at the notification from the luck monitoring and seeing his winning rate getting higher and higher, Ji Yuanshu seemed to already see the throne of the class's first place coming under him. However, he had always considered defeating Xiong Yu to be a matter of course. After all, under the luck monitoring, he could always see the opponent's extremely low winning rate. What he cared about wasn't defeating Xiong Yu, but whether he needed to increase investment now that victory was within his grasp. After all, there was still a large gap from his master's requirement of leading by 100 points. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Thinking of the famous proverb from the finance department, Ji Yuanshu made up his mind in an instant. Now is the time when Xiong Yu, Gongshu Jin, and all the classmates are being severely intimidated by my strength and are falling into fear. Ji Yuanshu knew that accumulating luck was not easy, especially for a freshman like him. I should take this opportunity to further consolidate my luck, solidify my position as class first, and also lay the groundwork for the subsequent cultivation of luck Dao techniques. At the same time, I can further enhance my strength. Even if I can't exceed 100 points, I'll exceed by as much as possible. So he at Xiong Yu and Gongshu Jin in the group again. Ji Yuanshu, you too, for the remaining exams, unleash all your potential and make it more enjoyable for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Yuanshu felt threads of luck flowing in from different directions. That was the confidence of one classmate after another in him. With the series of exams today, he was like a general who had won every battle, anchoring the word certain victory in the students' hearts through repeated victories. This was the convergence of human hearts, where luck resides. And a bronze coin artifact in his sea of consciousness gently swayed, suppressing all the gathered luck within his sea of consciousness, and beginning to enhance his various qualities. The Tao of luck is about following the trend. Then, through methods like showing off, applying pressure, and hyping, one guides human hearts and borrows luck. Using cultivation to build momentum, and using momentum to feed back into cultivation. Continuously growing stronger in a mutual cycle. Ultimately, becoming the trend itself. and Xiong believed that by taking first place in the class at this moment, he had already become an unstoppable force. As for the backlash of luck, Xiong couldn't imagine the possibility of defeat. Because until the last exam, he was still leading Zhang Yu and Gong Shujin in comprehensive score. They no longer have a chance. I will get more comprehensive points in the final exam. In the simulated construction site, all the foundation establishment class students were present, ushering in the last exam of the day. Lishan stood before them and said, to be more practical and objectively test professional ability, the department has reformed the exams since last year. Today, it was even decided to combine all professional skill exams into one, using practical examples to assess your engineering array diagram drawing, architectural drawing reading, building materials, construction engineering surveying, and your comprehensive construction ability. After all, practical ability is the most important thing in our civil engineering department. Today is the time to test the results of your first-year studies. As he spoke, everyone's eye sockets simultaneously received a stack of blueprints. Then Lishan pointed to the left side of the simulated construction site and said, on the left are all the building materials provided for this exam. You have half an hour to select and transport the materials you need from there. On the right is the construction site assigned to each of you. Within half an hour, you can do your best to select materials and transport them there. But after half an hour, you will not be allowed to leave your construction site. Next, you will have 3 hours to construct according to the contents of the blueprints. After 3 hours, everyone, regardless of completion, must stop work immediately and leave the site. Next, your work will be graded based on its completion. Then all construction sites will uniformly undergo 10 waves of attacks. The performance of your work during these 10 waves of attacks will also determine your score for this exam. Lishan looked at everyone and said, next, you have 15 minutes to prepare. Think carefully about what you should do next. Zhang Yu looked at the blueprint displayed in his eye socket. With the dual thought processes connected by telepathy, he quickly constructed the finished product from the blueprint in his mind. This is a bunker, right? Zhang Yu thought to himself, the structure of the bunker itself can be used to defend against various attacks. At the same time, this is probably also a hint, indicating that the 10 waves of attacks after the building is completed should be related to war. Thinking of this, Zhang Yu sighed in his heart. Is it the war element again? It seems many people in the civil engineering department really think that the university war will get bigger and bigger, so much so that they are constantly preparing for it in exams. Looking at the structure of the entire bunker, pondering the key points and his own advantages with my construction efficiency, completing this bunker within 3 hours is not a problem. The key is to push the strength of the bunker high enough to withstand more attacks and maintain a higher integrity after the assaults. Is there any way to maximize my advantages? Just as Zhang Yu was lost in thought, Li Zhao looked at the blueprint in his eye socket, his eyes flashing, and he already had the answer in his heart. The key is the materials. Li Zhao thought to himself, we need to use high-quality materials as much as possible to build this bunker. The better the materials, the higher the strength of the bunker will be. Even with the same construction efficiency, it will yield twice the result with half the effort. So materials are the most important. While thinking this, Li Zhao had already begun silently selecting materials according to the design on the blueprint and arranging them by importance. Since materials are the most important, the outcome of this exam actually lies in the first half hour of material selection. The competition will definitely be fierce then. I have to get ahead of everyone and take the best materials. Thinking of this, Li Zhao screened again and listed the 3 most important materials. 15 minutes passed in the blink of an eye. Almost the moment Lishan announced the start of the exam, Li Zhao shot out with a whoosh. But even though his heart was burning like a furnace, his magic power surged in his meridians, and his legs cleaved the air beneath him like giant axes, accelerating to the extreme. He could still only watch helplessly as 2 figures, like comets, directly shattered the atmosphere, bringing waves of supersonic thunder, surpassing him, and plunging into the construction material area. It was Xiong who was at the very front, followed closely by Zhang Yu. And just as the 2 rushed into the material area one after another, Gong Shujin's figure flickered, leaving a long trail of air current as he chased after them, being the third to enter the material area. Watching people rush ahead of him, Li Zhao was a little nervous, but not flustered, simply because he had long anticipated this. Silently crossing out the top 3 most important construction materials in his mind, he went directly to look for the 4th and 5th most important materials first. The materials ranked higher will inevitably face fierce competition, and it will be hard for me to snatch them. Instead of doing that, it's better to first set my sights on the next level. But after Li Zhao searched for a while, a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. What's going on? Why is there only secret steel from number 5 to number 10? Where is the secret steel above number 10? And why are the other materials also so low grade? Could it be that this exam requires us to complete the bunker using these low-end, or even inferior, materials? Just as Li Zhao was in shock, he saw Yingxing's GNG energy vibrate, already sweeping up a large batch of inferior steel. And regarding the quality of the construction materials, she wasn't surprised at all. I said it was a test of practical skills. Then how to reduce costs, how to cut corners, for example, using inferior materials to build high-quality buildings, can certainly also be an assessment direction. Lingxing's GNG energy around her was like a dragon, sweeping up dozens of tons of construction materials, and she rushed towards the target location. At the same time, bursts of sonic booms exploded in her ears. Lingxing looked up and saw Ji Yuanqi leading the way, with Zhang Yu close behind. Their GNG energy permeated around them, like a strong wind sweeping away scattered clouds, carrying construction materials flying out in the sky. Watching this scene, Lingxing sighed inwardly at the gap between herself and the two, but quickly adjusted her mindset. My opponents are not them. My goal is to be 4th in the class. Meanwhile, watching the students moving construction materials back and forth, Tu Lishan lamented, immortal Dao is internal small transportation, while civil engineering is external large transportation. One internal and one external, one hidden and one visible, they interact with each other, precisely containing the great mysteries within, immortal Dao. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. As Tu Lishan announced the end of the material transportation time, Yingxing looked at the large amount of materials at her construction site and showed a satisfied smile. In fact, according to the requirements on the blueprint, the materials she transported in this half hour, obviously, far exceeded what was needed for the building. But soon everyone understood why she did this. As Tu Lishan announced the start of construction, Yingxing let out a low shout. Waves of high-temperature GNG energy emitted a scorching force that distorted the atmosphere, enveloping the large amount of steel in front of her. Accompanied by the high-temperature coverage, Yingxing struck another palm. Amidst crackling sounds, streaks of lightning GNG energy struck the high-temperature steel, ray refining and reshaping it. If there are no high-quality materials, then just ray refine them yourself. At a construction site, especially a battlefield construction site, there isn't always a supply of guaranteed quality materials. The emphasis is on using local resources. And seeing Yingxing ray refining materials, many students present were slightly surprised, then enlightened, and then a look of frustration appeared in their eyes. Li Zhao also sighed inwardly watching this scene. So, she is going to ray refine the building materials on site? Is this the practical experience passed down from the 6th generation of civil engineers? But most students probably thought of this, and there isn't enough time. This requires quite a high level of cultivation. Just as Li Zhao was lamenting Yingxing's rich experience and deep cultivation, the ground suddenly trembled violently. What's going on? At the same time, Yu Xing'an, who was observing the surrounding students, turned his head and saw that Gongshu Jin had somehow replaced the magical skeletons on his arms. At this moment, his arms looked like two huge battering rams smashing onto the ground with a rumbling sound. Meanwhile, Yu Xing'an could also see several sets of magical skeletons lined up behind Gongshu Jin, waiting to be switched and used at any time. Damn rich guy. Yu Xing'an looked at this scene, full of jealousy, wishing he could strip off the magical skeletons on the other party and wear them himself. And looking at the other party's actions, Yu Xing'an thought to himself, is he laying the foundation? But he quickly noticed something was wrong. Under the observation of his three-eye divine sight, the spiritual energy in the air had changed. This is a change in the spiritual pulse. Yu Xing'an said in surprise, there's a spiritual pulse in this exam hall too. Of course there is. Gongshu Jin felt the change in the terrain under his feet, and snorted coldly in his heart. The exam hall simulates a real battlefield construction site environment, so there are naturally spiritual pulses, simulated by spiritual energy, channels beneath the ground. Ordinary workers look at materials, excellent workers look at structure, but true civil engineering masters look at formations. The structure and materials of the bunker are not the most important. The formation within it is the most crucial part. As long as the formation is strong enough, even a dirt wall can withstand thousands of troops, lightning, and fire. And to enhance the power of the formation, drawing in the spiritual pulse is naturally the most important thing. The two-handed magical skeleton he had just equipped was called the Earth-Shaking Arm. After infusing it with magic power, he could unleash the level 20 Earth-Shaking Palm. Not only that, the impact structure contained within the Earth-Shaking Arm, as well as the experience summarized from countless users, could make the effect of the Earth-Shaking Palm far exceed that of students who had painstakingly cultivated the Earth-Shaking Palm to level 20 themselves. How can the skills honed through my own 1,000 trials and 100 tribulations compare to the magical skeletons and martial arts I bought with spirit coins? Spiritual pulse. Come out for me. Gongshu Jin's GNG energy burned like flames, and then he injected it all into his earth-shaking arm. After passing through layers of impact structures, it transformed into transparent ripples visible to the naked eye, bringing distorted air and dust, and slammed fiercely into the ground beneath his feet. With a loud bang, some students' legs went weak, and they fell to the ground. At the same time, the simulated spiritual pulse underground, under the violent vibration, had already shifted towards Gongshu Jin's construction site, which would greatly increase the power of his formation. But at this moment, a similar vibrating sound came, shifting the spiritual pulse to the other side again. Gongshu Jin suddenly turned his head, and saw that Ji Yuanshu was also using the earth-shaking palm, and he was performing this technique with his bare hands, without the help of a magical skeleton. Level 20 earth-shaking palm. Gongshu Jin said in surprise in his heart. He has already cultivated the level 20 earth-shaking palm. And its power is greater than mine. Is it because his base stats are higher than mine? Gongshu Jin felt it wasn't just because of this point. In his observation, every palm strike Ji Yuanshu made was just right in terms of strength, movement, and GNG energy, reaching the pinnacle of perfection. It was as if the spiritual pulse that Ji Yuanshu was drawing in was originally supposed to be in that position. Everything was destined by heaven, and if he, Gongshu Jin, resisted this point, he would be defying the will of heaven. After another round of clashes, Gongshu Jin was extremely unwilling, but had to admit that in the competition of pulling the spiritual pulse, he was completely at a disadvantage. Ji Yuanshu on the other side didn't care about this. After pulling with Gongshu Jin, and completely surpassing him, he formed a Taoist hand seal. The surging destiny in his mind slightly rippled, and the feeling of divine assistance from the earth-shaking palm disappeared completely. But the next moment, this destiny was added to his concrete GNG energy, making this GNG energy, when used, like a divine craftsmanship. Every ounce of strength, every bit of GNG energy, operated just right. His concrete GNG energy was only level 10, but at this moment, it erupted with the effect of level 20. This was the terrifying aspect of Destiny Tao arts. As long as Ji Yuanshu was willing to consume destiny, he could make any of his techniques blessed with good fortune, unleashing the maximum effect that could be achieved at the current realm. Of course, this process also consumes destiny. Once destiny is greatly damaged, or even exhausted, not only will the power of the technique not increase, but its power will even decrease when used, and mistakes will be frequent. However, at this moment, Ji Yuanshu was confident that he was firmly in the top position of the class, with destiny soaring in good fortune, at its peak. It was absolutely impossible for him to be defeated in this battle, let alone exhaust his destiny. Yu Xingyan glanced at Ling's in refining materials, from time to time, then looked at Gongshu Jin's construction movements, and finally stared at the other students. With the help of his three-eye divine ability, which granted him a panoramic view, he could clearly observe the actions and conditions of each student. My construction ability isn't considered strong. After all, I haven't been on construction sites for most of my time. Instead, I've been giving massages to people who come from them. Yu Xingyan memorized the students' movements, imitated their movements, and repeated their movements. At this moment, Yu Xingyan was like an excellent tailor, pasting the construction steps of different people together and sewing them onto his construction site. But in the next moment, he suddenly paused slightly. This kid Zhang Yu. In his observation, Zhang Yu was surprisingly sitting in place, stuffing rebar and cement into his stomach in large mouthfuls. What is this guy doing? Mooching food and drinks on the exam site? Is now the time for this? Meanwhile, on the other construction site, Zhang Yu felt the building materials he had put into his digestive system, and thought to himself, Yingshan's choice was correct. The quality of building materials indeed needs to be improved by ourselves. Zhang Yu's whole body's mana surged, and the muscles all over his body expanded and contracted, bursting forth with unparalleled elasticity. Mountain True Form Chapter Propel. The next moment, accompanied by the infusion of mana, Zhang Yu's muscles and internal organs suddenly expanded, like an inflated balloon, abruptly swelling into a giant. Then, he opened his mouth wide and swallowed large quantities of building materials into his belly. But Zhang Yu was not trying to digest these materials. He intended to use his digestive system, forged from secret steel number 15, to reprocess these building materials and significantly enhance their strength. Feeling the transformation of the building materials within his abdomen, Zhang Yu's gaze did not relax in the slightest. Just like this isn't enough. Zhang Yu muttered in his heart, in this exam site, when it comes to Dharma skeletons, wealth, experience, or even abilities like Taoist techniques, there are all people stronger than me. If I want to win, I must fully utilize my advantages, using the most fundamental and earth civil engineering power within me to build this bunker into something indestructible. Zhang Yu let out a low shout, and his body's protective aura surged dramatically. Streaks of formless strong men appeared behind him, catching the building materials he spat out, and beginning to build the foundation on the construction site. Ji Yuanshu had been observing Zhang Yu's state. After all, the other party was the student whose strength was closest to his in this exam. And seeing Zhang Yu's actions of condensing humanoid, protective aura figures, he felt somewhat dismissive in his heart. Truly a waste of mana. As walls of rebar and cement rose from the ground, Zhang Yu's formless strongmen moved through them, and his construction team gradually became difficult to see. Time quickly passed amidst the sounds of hammering and collision on the exam site. Every student was giving their all, showcasing the essence of what they learned in their first year, and pouring it without reservation into the construction site before them. Watching the bunkers gradually rise from the ground, and observing the actions of every student, Xiong also became increasingly curious and expectant about the final result. Seeing that the 3 hours of construction time was about to end, fewer and fewer students were still continuing construction. The vast majority of people had already completed all construction content. Looking at the sounds of frantic hammering still coming from Zhang Yu's bunker, Gong Shujin thought to himself, could it be that his mana consumption was too severe before his construction efficiency declined, and he fell behind instead? As the 3 hours of construction time ended, the activity within Zhang Yu's construction site also stopped. He was seen walking out from the bunker with a hint of regret on his face. Everyone watching this scene speculated in their hearts whether Zhang Yu failed to completely finish the interior of the bunker. At the same time, Xiong's eye skeleton flashed slightly, and a young man wearing a Taoist robe and dressed like an ancient person had already appeared before him. It was precisely Director Gao's spirit realm projection appearing. Director Gao said indifferently, "How is the situation?" Xiong said respectfully, "Construction has just finished, and we are now about to conduct an inspection." Assistant after assistant, along with other civil engineering teachers invigilating the exam, were seen walking into each bunker, inspecting the conditions within one by one, and recording them. Watching this scene, Director Gao nodded slightly, and said casually, I'm here to see the first-year students' results." Xiong could feel that Director Gao was in a bad mood, and considering the date, he guessed it was probably related to the final exam results. Director Gao was indeed dissatisfied with the final exam results of each grade this time. Currently, among the students of the Civil Engineering Department's War Faction and Peace Faction, the War Faction had 5 grades lagging behind in results and had the first place taken away. If Ji Yuanshu took first place in the first year, then overall it would be 6 grades lagging behind. Director Gao asked, "How high is Zhang Yu and Gong Shujin's chance of winning?" Xiong hesitated for a moment and said, "It's hard to say." Director Gao frowned, "Then I'll take a look myself." At the same time, many students gathered outside the construction site, nervously waiting for the inspection phase and the following 10 waves of attacks. The inspection was quickly completed. Yingxin looked at her 100% completion rate and slightly breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Now, it just depends on how many waves of attacks it can withstand. spirit realm projections were seen rising around the construction site in everyone's eye. Skeletons, they appeared as shimmering light bands surrounding the site, displaying no entry. As Xiong announced the start of the final phase of the exam, the first wave of attacks also arrived. As the surrounding partitions rose, massive pipes unfolded from underground. The next moment, like a mountain torrent pouring down, angry waves like giant dragons were already crashing towards the bunkers on site. Terrifying power surged in the giant waves, which crashed against the bunkers again and again like battering rams, bombarding them repeatedly, causing many students to feel apprehensive in their hearts, fearing their bunkers would be washed away. 10 minutes later, the tide gradually receded. Xiong nodded slightly and began the second wave of attacks. Amidst the rumbling sounds, all the bunkers were seen shaking slightly, as the array of the simulated exam site was activated. The next moment, the ground where the bunkers were located undulated up and down, as if stirring up monstrous waves in the earth. Accompanied by the violent shaking of the ground, the bunkers seemed to be experiencing a magnitude 7 or 8 earthquake. Some students looked at the cracked walls of their works with worried expressions. Some students looked at their rock-solid works and breathed a sigh of relief. 1 minute later, with the end of the simulated earthquake, not a single bunker on site collapsed. The third wave of attacks saw violent explosions rise up, and visible shockwaves swept over the bunkers. It was in this wave of attacks that the walls of some bunkers finally began to collapse. And when the fourth wave of attacks ended, only 4 bunkers on the field still maintained their complete shape. But the outer wall of one of them had already cracked, also exposing large patches of blood stains within the wall. Xiong, watching this scene, was slightly surprised Yingxin actually held out until this wave. Looking at the bloodstains in the wall, his gaze shifted as if blood sacrifice. Yingxin's information appeared in Director Gao's eye skeleton. He nodded slightly and said, during the process of Ray refining the materials, she added her own essence blood and the ancestral ashes stored within her body, completing the blood sacrifice. Director Gao smiled slightly. In his eyes, students who looked similar to Yingxin seemed to appear one by one. Those were Yingxin's father, grandfather, and even earlier ancestors. As expected of a 6th-generation civil engineer, she mastered the technique of construction site blood sacrifice in her first year. The fifth wave of attacks saw huge fireballs rise up, swallowing the remaining bunkers one by one. As the bunker built by Yingxin was mostly pulverized, the bunker built by Gong Shujin also broke open with a large hole, revealing a section of spine within. The blood vessels and nerves on that spine spread throughout the entire wall, absorbing and releasing the spiritual energy within the array, as if it had become the heart of the building. Xiong's gaze shifted. He inserted his own Vajra, profound, forged, spine, Dharma, skeleton, into the array's core. Director Gao nodded appreciatively. Oh. Is it driving living piles? This is a construction technique from the 2nd year. I didn't expect him to have mastered it already, and even insert his own Dharma, skeleton, into it. The 6th wave of attacks, accompanied by flashing lightning, saw streams of lightning fire cover the entire construction site. Amidst the continuous explosions, waves of energy swept in all directions, leveling all the broken walls and ruins. Looking at his spine that disappeared in the explosion, Gong Shujin couldn't help but feel heartbroken, roaring in his mind, "My Vajra profound forged." But thinking that he used his own spine to drive living piles, and only managed to get 3rd place, he couldn't help but stare intently at the 2 remaining bunkers, as if wanting to see clearly what kind of civil engineering techniques they used to remain standing until now. Xiong's gaze shifted slightly. Yuanchu's construction records and inspection records appeared in his eye skeleton. When Xiong first saw these before, he was surprised in his heart. And now, browsing again, he couldn't help but feel amazed again. Truly. In the inspection records, within the bunker's basement, Yuanchu's corpse was sitting cross-legged. He actually buried himself inside, using his own corpse to suppress luck, gather spiritual energy, and strengthen the array to its limit. No, it's not just like this. As early as when he was drawing the spiritual vein, he was already constructing an auspicious burial site. At that time, he intended to bury himself. Xiong's gaze swept over the broken walls and ruins and the simulated spiritual vein underground. At first, he was just using the auspicious burial site and the buried corpse to suppress luck, occupying the most spiritual energy in the spiritual vein. But after each bunker collapsed, Yuanchu's bunker gathered an extra portion of spiritual energy. This is the essence of the financial department's path of luck. Every extra resource can move more resources, eventually snowballing and even influencing the general trend of the world. By this moment, 90% of the spiritual energy in the simulated spiritual vein had all gathered in Ji Yuanshu's bunker. Talishan looked outside the exam site, at the figure belonging to Ji Yuanshu. At this moment, Ji Yuanshu's divine soul was preserved in the spirit realm. What appeared here was his spirit realm projection. It was just that the surrounding students were used to observing the world with their eye skeletons, and the vast majority of people didn't notice this point. At the same time, Talishan could also feel the medical company's emergency rescue team was already waiting outside the exam site. One of the young doctors said, "Captain, how much longer do we have to wait?" The leading doctor said indifferently, "We can go in and save people when the exam ends." The young doctor asked curiously, "People who can afford to hire us, how can they still die in the exam site?" The leading doctor said casually, "For rich people, dying a few times a year is very normal. It's not like poor people who can't afford to die. In our line of work, remember not to worry about how the client died, just revive their physical body each time." Director Gao coldly looked at Ji Yuanshu's bunker, feeling the stability of the bunker and the array under the blessing of luck. Just at this moment, a proud voice came, "Old Gao, how is my student's mastery of the path of luck?" A spirit realm projection was seen appearing before Talishan, and Director Gao. It was precisely Ji Yuanshu's master, Director Lin, the representative of the Civil Engineering Department's peace faction. Director Gao glanced coldly at the other party, and said indifferently, "It is not my civil engineering orthodox path." Director Lin sighed, "How can there be an orthodox path in civil engineering? No matter how good your construction is, no matter how exquisite your materials are, no matter how clever your design is, how can it compare to luck? How can it go against the will of heaven? You should know that throughout history, even the most impregnable fortress has perished due to human disaster. Has any truly been knocked down by force? No matter how refined your civil engineering is, if you don't combine it with finance and don't understand luck, in the end, you are just someone else's footcloth, to be thrown away after use." Director Gao snorted coldly and said, "The financial department just turns the world into a series of big casinos. If everyone is gambling, who will truly build Kongshu? The sect needs to build Kongshu, needs to prosper Kongshu. This is the general trend. Stop using big talk to pressure me. Are you someone who builds Kongshu? And you talk about the general trend with me? The general trend is in the hands of whoever has the money." Director Lin sneered, looked at the two bunkers finally remaining on the site, and said indifferently, "I have more excellent disciples than you, more projects in hand than you, and the company's bank loans are more than yours. If the general trend isn't with me, who can it be with?" Just like on this exam site now, all the spiritual energy has gathered around Ji Yuanshu. He is favored by luck, driven by the general trend. How long can your civil engineering orthodox path block it? Listening to Audio Nova. After saying what he wanted to say, Director Lin of the peace faction turned his head, no longer engaging in negotiations with Director Gao of the war faction. He looked towards the examination hall not far away. In his observation, countless spiritual energies beneath the vast ground were continuously converging towards Ji Yuanshu's bunker. With the absolute support of the spiritual veins, accompanied by the surging spiritual energy, the operation of the entire formation could be said to have reached its peak state. Under the multiple blessings of the formation's power, a faint, shimmering light could be seen emanating from the bunker's outer walls, like a force field enveloping the entire building. Not only did it make the entire bunker glow brightly, but even after the 6 waves of attacks ended, the entire building, under the protection of the formation, appeared spotless. In this examination hall of ruins, it looked like the only sacred place. In contrast, on the other side, because most of the spiritual energy was occupied by Ji Yuanshu's bunker, the formation in Zhang Yu's bunker operated poorly, and the blessing on the building was as thin as paper. And now, after 6 waves of attacks, although the main structure of Zhang Yu's bunker was undamaged, its surface was covered with marks left by various fires, explosions, and impacts. The outermost layer of plaster had almost been peeled off. Compared to Ji Yuanshu's bunker, its exterior looked like the difference between a beggar and a corporate elite. Anyone seeing this scene would only think that Ji Yuanshu's bunker was far superior to Zhang Yu's in terms of construction, quality, and could withstand the subsequent attacks for a longer time. Dongshu Jin sighed in his heart, the finance department truly lives up to its reputation as one of the 3 major AIMS majors. Compared to the civil engineering department, which is still researching how to exert brute force, the finance department has completely surpassed us in terms of scope. How can working oneself to death on a construction site compare to the overall resource allocation? On the other side, Yingxin glanced at Ji Yuanshu's bunker, then looked at Zhang Yu's bunker, thinking to herself, one side is a construction site with ample funds and overtime pay, while the other looks like a creation where the project is finished but the construction costs are still owed. She thought, the outcome is decided. And just as similar thoughts arose in everyone's minds, the seventh wave of attacks on the field had also arrived. Blue lightning flickered in the air. Even before the attack began, the free-floating electrical charges in the air made everyone in the Foundation establishment classes' hair stand on end. Students with strong perception could even feel powerful electromagnetic forces being summoned from above the ceiling, which was over 10 meters high. Gong Shujin thought to himself, has the power of the primordial magnetic passage been summoned? As expected, each wave of attack is stronger than the last, and the difference between each wave is getting larger, which can also more accurately differentiate students' scores. But this also means that the gap between the top students' scores and others will be wider. There won't be a situation where someone scores 100 points, simply because the total score is 100. After this wave of lightning magic, Zhang Yu's bunker will probably be breached. As Gong Shujin was thinking, streaks of lightning, carrying dazzling electric light like pillars of thunder, blasted towards the only two remaining bunkers. Amidst the crackling explosions, the blinding lightning instantly engulfed the entire building, making it impossible to see what was happening inside. As the lightning gradually dissipated, the air was filled with the smell of high-temperature burning. The ground in the center of the examination hall was scorched black, and a large amount of sand and soil had melted into a viscous liquid at high temperatures, which was now gradually cooling and forming a glassy substance. Ji Yuanshu's bunker still stood tall amidst the high-temperature heat, appearing completely unscathed. But to everyone's surprise, Zhang Yu's bunker on the other side, although its outer walls were covered in scorched marks, also remained standing, maintaining its complete main structure. Even after the eighth wave of attacks ended, accompanied by violent explosions and subsequent dissipation, a large section of the formation's glow on the outer wall of Ji Yuanshu's bunker was erased. And in the weakest part of the formation's power, a huge crack appeared, faintly revealing the condition inside the bunker. In contrast, Zhang Yu's bunker, apart from the increasingly dark scorch marks, showed no further damage. What? Gong Shujin looked at this scene in shock. How is that possible? The bunker with the perfectly functioning formation was blown open with a crack. But the bunker with the intermittent formation operation was completely unharmed. It wasn't just Gong Shujin, almost all the students present found it hard to understand how this scene came about. Director Lin of the Peace faction was also slightly surprised, but unlike the students who could only guess wildly in their minds, his spiritual realm projection flickered slightly, and he had already arrived inside the bunker built by Zhang Yu. This is... Looking at the reinforced concrete columns inside the bunker, his eyebrow twitched slightly, and a guess faintly emerged in his mind. Without further observation, Director Lin waved his hand and summoned the acceptance report for analysis. Originally, just by observing the state of the formation's operation, Director Lin had believed that Ji Yuanshu had secured the victory. But the situation at this moment made him realize that things were not that simple. The next moment, lines of data, photos, video footage, and acceptance evaluations for the bunker appeared before him. 30 layers of explosion-proof armor poured. Isolation layer installed between the foundation and rock mass to reduce the transmission of explosion vibrations. Multiple layers of sand, gravel, and alloy consuming kinetic energy. Dense reinforced concrete columns, multiple parallel load-bearing systems, and viscous resistance structures at key nodes to absorb explosion energy and further mitigate structural damage. Looking at the lines of records, even Director Lin was slightly taken aback. So many redundant structures. In 3 hours. His construction volume is more than twice that of others. This kid, did he achieve this through pure civil engineering skills? Just then, Director Gao's figure appeared beside Director Lin. Looking at the incredibly solid bunker before them, he smiled slightly and said, Director Lin, as you said, which truly impenetrable fortress isn't breached from within? In project matters, the finance department might be able to stir up trouble, but in the examination hall, with only cold steel bars and concrete, It's ultimately our own civil engineering skills that have the final say. Director Lin casually dismissed the data before him and sneered, Director Gao, don't celebrate too early. Zhang Yu's construction efficiency is impressive, but steel bars and concrete, no matter how hard, have their limits and will soon exceed their fatigue limit. However, with the blessing of luck, the prevailing trend, and the convergence of spiritual energy, which are the powers of timing and geography, that is infinite. His gaze seemed to penetrate through numerous obstacles, seeing Ji Yuanshu's bunker on the other side. Under the infusion of spiritual veins, the formation's power, which had been weakened, recovered and quickly reached its peak. The formation can recover to its peak again and again, but can this bunker? Director Lin said pointedly, with money comes luck, and countless opportunities. Otherwise, no matter how skilled you are or how hard the steel bars are, how many times can you afford to fail? Director Gao looked at him without backing down, and said calmly, no one can be undefeated forever. I just need to fight until the end in this battle. All right then, let's see who can stand until the end. Director Lin stared intently at the other party. The intentions of both sides seemed to cross multiple spiritual realms at this moment, colliding and stirring in the air. At the same time, the ninth wave of attacks descended from the sky. Streaks of yin thunder burst forth, sweeping out in all directions with dark, heavy lightning. Under the impact of the lightning, the formation's power outside Ji Yuanshu's bunker violently surged. Layer after layer of protection was disintegrated by the yin thunder, and signs of collapse began to appear on the outer walls. And when the 10th wave of attacks, the strongest one, arrived, streaks of thunder dragons descended from the sky. The resulting explosions, high temperatures, and electromagnetic forces made the students not far away retreat repeatedly. Ji Yuanshu's bunker trembled violently, and finally gradually collapsed under the bombardment of shockwaves, resembling a tsunami. When the attack completely ended, the bunker, which originally had 3 floors, was left with only the last floor. As for Zhang Yu's bunker on the other side, apart from a partial collapse of one outer wall, the main structure remained completely intact. Seeing this scene, Director Lin's brows furrowed sharply. Even with more than twice the construction volume and reinforcement, it's impossible to achieve this. What else did he do? With a thought, Zhang Yu's construction records appeared before him. Director Gao smiled slightly, and instructed Talishan, take the students for a good look on site, and let them learn. Led by Talishan, Gong Shujin, Yingzhen, Li Zhao, Yu Xing'an, and others walked into the examination hall one after another. Stepping on the still scorching ground, they slowly walked towards the bunker built by Zhang Yu. Upon seeing the large number of redundant structures inside, Gong Shujin said in surprise, he built so much in just 3 hours? Talishan said, this is where student Zhang Yu is impressive. Bringing you in today to see his work is to let you know the real gap between yourselves and him. As he spoke, he lightly tapped his fingertip, and a video appeared before everyone. For post-examination acceptance, recording, and monitoring, the entire examination process of every candidate in the examination hall is filmed and recorded. And what was playing in the video at this moment was Zhang Yu's construction process. If seeing the humanoid Trukir running back and forth, working like an entire construction crew, only slightly surprised the students. Then the words Talishan said next made them feel a touch of shock. Talishan said calmly, Zhang Yu maintained this level of construction for 3 hours straight. Thinking of the scenes where Zhang Yu took medicine repeatedly during the construction process, Talishan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This kind of drug absorption ability, load-bearing capacity, and a powerful physique that can be repeatedly squeezed. Truly a born civil engineering saint body. A thought flashed through his mind, and Talishan continued, of course, relying solely on these, it would still be impossible to withstand 10 waves of attacks. The key to him being able to do this lies in the construction materials. Li Zhao. Talishan gestured for Li Zhao to attack the outer wall of the bunker in front of them. Li Zhao unleashed a palm strike, and the roaring true key, like cannon fire, slammed heavily into it. However, not only did the outer wall remain completely still, but Li Zhao felt a strong backlash force. He staggered back several steps, looking at the bunker wall in surprise. Li Zhao exclaimed in shock, after so many attacks, it's still so sturdy? What material is this? This is Zhang Yu's digestive waste, Talishan said, pointing at the entire bunker. Most of the building materials for this whole bunker are his digestive waste. With that, He pointed to a small area of uneven texture on the inner side of the wall and said, "Look, these are Xiong Yu's stomach patterns. They are left over from the intense squeezing of his stomach during the material processing, his digestive traces." Besides the true key used in the construction, Xiong Yu's body itself repeatedly refined the building materials using the high-temperature, high-pressure environment inside him. He stripped away the impurities from the building materials, leaving behind the hard-to-digest essence, forming high-strength materials to build the house. And throughout this entire process, he continuously digested for a full 3 hours. Dong Shujin was extremely surprised upon hearing this, and recalling Xiong Yu's appetite shown during the previous gathering, he thought to himself, "This guy Xiong Yu's digestive ability is even more terrifying than I estimated before. He can actually do this." On the other side, Li Zhao's heart trembled upon hearing this, and then he was even more shocked. The building materials used for this bunker were pulled out by Xiong Yu. He was building and pulling for 3 hours at the same time. Meanwhile, Director Lin looked at the construction records, watching Xiong Yu swallow large amounts of building materials, constantly spitting out impurities, and finally spitting out the most solid, most essential, and hardest to digest parts. His expression also became very complicated. This building in front of him was not only comprehensively reinforced through powerful construction capabilities, but it also surpassed all other candidates in terms of building materials. At the same time, beside Director Lin, Director Gao of the war faction looked at the pillars in front of them, and said calmly, "In civil engineering, the most important things are ultimately materials and technology. Without sufficiently strong materials, without truly ingenious technology, how could we have the flourishing Kongshu era we see today? Just take this university city we're standing in. 1,000 years ago, even if you had infinite money, even if you could gather resources from all over the world, could you have built it?" It wasn't just Li Zhao who was shocked. The other students present, watching Xiong Yu in the video, were all deeply shaken. Yingxin even pointed out Li Zhao's mistake. It wasn't just pulling for 3 hours. Xiong Yu was eating and pulling, plus high-intensity construction, for a full 3 hours, elevating the quality of this bunker to another dimension. Tu Lishan reminded, "Don't use the word pull. What classmate Xiong Yu did was still transportation, transporting building materials from the storage location into his stomach, and then transporting them from his stomach to the construction site. In short, classmate Xiong Yu's performance today is a comprehensive victory in terms of digestive ability, construction ability, physical foundation, and professional skills." Li Zhao knew Tilishan was right. With all these abilities, it would be impossible for him to achieve even one, yet Xiong Yu had achieved every single one, to a level surpassing all the students present. Feeling the gazes of shock, awe, envy, or jealousy from everyone, Xiong Yu silently activated the camera function of his Eye of the Abyss and captured this scene. Especially Ji Yuanshu's unpleasant expression, which made him take a few extra shots. On the other side, listening to Director Gao, Director Lin of the Peace faction snorted and said, "Materials and civil engineering are very important on this construction site. But even if you don't do it, and I don't do it, are we really short of people to do it? Yes, you're right, 1,000 years ago, this university city couldn't have been built. But among the people who could command vast wealth, and gather resources from all over the world 1,000 years ago, which one isn't alive today? Whether it's technology or materials, all results will ultimately belong to them." Hearing the response, the Taoist robe in Director Gao's projection rippled. He said angrily, "Stubborn. Didn't you see in today's battle that Xiong Yu relied on his solid strength to directly defeat Ji Yuanshu? You think Xiong uses solid strength?" Director Lin chuckled faintly. "Old Gao, you're not that old, but your heart is truly too old. Listen to what those students are saying." A student from the Foundation Establishment class was heard saying, "Although Xiong Yu won against Ji Yuanshu this time, he didn't spend much money. It feels like he lacks confidence and staying power. It's not true solid strength." Another student said, "In terms of foundation, Xiong Yu is indeed a bit lacking, but he won today after all, and he might be the top student this year." Director Lin said, "Did you hear? Money is king, it's the true solid strength. Your line of thinking is long outdated. If you keep holding on to it, you'll be eliminated sooner or later." Director Gao scoffed, Anyway, in this round, no matter how much you say, Xiong Yu won." As they reached this point, the two paused slightly, because the final exam results and comprehensive scores had just been calculated. With the authority of these two directors, they could naturally see the specific scores and rankings in the back end immediately. In an instant, Director Lin's expression stiffened slightly, while the smile on Director Gao's face deepened. If Ji Yuanshu had focused on his main major, he might not have lost. But he lost now, and he lost even worse after concurrently studying finance and gambling his luck. So he lost even more miserably. It's like what you're doing now. Have you considered the consequences if you lose? Looking at the final ranking for the semester, Director Ling snorted and said nothing, his spiritual realm projection directly dissipating. Director Gao watched the direction where the other party disappeared, the coldness in his eyes growing heavier, but after a moment, he slowly retracted it. Then he looked in Zhang Yu's direction, and smiled slightly. I didn't expect everyone to look down on you, but you turned out to be the most promising. Director Gao hadn't had much confidence in the competition between Zhang Yu and Ji Yuanshu initially, but he didn't expect the former to give him such a big surprise at the end of the semester. The investment in Zhang Yu can be increased. Just as agreed before, I'll take him as a registered disciple. And the heavenly Kunlun mountain moving divine power. Thinking of this, Gong Shu Jin's figure flashed in Director Gao's mind. Originally, the war faction planned for the next successor of the heavenly Kunlun, mountain moving, divine, power, to be Gong Shu Jin. But at this moment, Zhang Yu's performance had clearly completely surpassed Gong Shu Jin. Then let's replace Gong Shu Jin with him. Let's give him another push and see if this kid can get the military permit. Outside the examination hall, as the exam completely ended and the site lockdown was lifted, the medical teams waiting outside immediately rushed in. They skillfully located the bodies, set up cordon lines, and then began on-site rescue, while projecting advertisements. Still worried about going berserk? Still worried about accidentally dying from overwork during overtime, and delaying your job? Do you want to gamble your life, give your all, and leave no regrets in crucial exams? Benevolent Heart Medical lets you die when you want, truly achieving death freedom. And watching the medical team begin excavating the bunker, retrieving Ji Yuanshu's corpse for rescue, many students showed surprise. Some learned about it after seeing the advertisement, and then gasped in their hearts, such expensive service. Someone thought to themselves, Ji Yuanshu actually called the died yet medical team. He's so rich. Someone looked at Ji Yuanshu's body and just felt, as expected of the rich, he looks so handsome when he's resurrected. Truly heroic and spirited. And Ji Yuanshu, transformed into a spiritual realm projection, was also watching this scene. According to his original plan, after winning first place, the medical team would enter, and his body would be dug out under everyone's gaze dead, and then resurrected. At that moment, people's hearts would be won over. He would not only become the universally acknowledged first place, but his luck would also surge even more intensely. But at this moment, everything was completely different from what he had imagined. Ji Yuanshu felt that his excavated body was like a stepping stone, fiercely trampled underfoot by Zhang Yu. This was because many students were gradually realizing the cause of Ji Yuanshu's death. Yingxin looked at Ji Yuanshu's excavated body and was shocked. Ji Yuanshu. He actually used a human sacrifice. Gambled his own life. Zhang Yu defeated Ji Yuanshu's life. Yingxin quickly calculated in her mind, Ji Yuanshu's comprehensive score before this exam was higher than Zhang Yu's, but judging by the difference in this exam, it seems Zhang Yu might have a chance to surpass Ji Yuanshu. Gong Shu Jin on the other side also looked at Zhang Yu with great shock. Ji Yuanshu gambled a life and still didn't win against Zhang Yu. I wonder if Zhang Yu's ranking will surpass Ji Yuanshu's after the comprehensive score for this exam is calculated. If Li Shan's previous analysis had made everyone aware that Zhang Yu was strong, then now, when Ji Yuanshu's body was dug out, the students felt Zhang Yu's strength even more profoundly. Meanwhile, a flash of electric light passed over Ji Yuanshu's body, and his heartbeat and blood flow gradually recovered. Immediately after, his brain also resumed functioning. Then his soul from the spiritual realm was guided back into his body. Looking at Ji Yuanshu's open eyes, the leading doctor smiled and said, Mr. Ji, welcome back. We will now test your consciousness recovery. Ignoring the other party, the moment his consciousness recovered, Ji Yuanshu felt the accumulated luck in his mind churning violently, like boiling magma, wanting to erupt from his body. Forcibly using the copper coin magic treasure in his mind to temporarily suppress the luck, Ji Yuanshu's expression became even uglier. He understood very well. Once the comprehensive scores and rankings were updated tonight, as long as he fell behind Zhang Yu's ranking, he would face an incredibly violent backlash of luck. On the other side, Zhang Yu looked at Yu Xing'an beside him, patted his shoulder, and said, "Xing'an, what's wrong?" Yu Xing'an said, "Zhang Yu, I am really damn happy for you.